Hi, everybody. This is Giovanni Santostasi, and I am the director of a scientific Bitcoin institute. I'm doing this live show. It was no plan to discuss an interesting debate that is going on right now. Let's see if I can share it with you. So it's basically this discussion I'm having with this person. It's interesting because this morning somebody contacted me and said, I kind of like this Henrik guy, and but he has bad views about Bitcoin. And so I say, what do you think about that? I say, well, I don't know until I see what he claims. And then I saw the usual claim, right, of it is so lazy claim, and it has an emotional appeal to some people that that don't like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a Ponzi. It's one of the laziest things that you can say about Bitcoin, right? And they don't really present arguments. Their main argument, usually, right, and this is also what Peter Schiff says, is that there are no dividends, there is no cash flow. Some silly people bring even an example from the Security Exchange Commission that has like a list of warning signs, right? And one of the silliest discussion I ever had, but with somebody that has no really depth, but it's still indicative of how some people think about this stuff, right? They want to force their understanding of a fiat world on Bitcoin that is trying to escape the fiat world. And so that person was saying, oh, by the way, this person was connected with XRP. So, of course, they want to use this component of Bitcoin, as a negative factor because XRP has it, right? So I thought evidently XRP is not a Ponzi scheme, but this person basically was saying if Bitcoin is not a registered business, it is one of the most ridiculous argument about Bitcoin being a Ponzi scheme. But this guy, this Henrik, by the way, he's not just a random guy. He's I don't know much about him. I can see just his responses that they are very disappointing. But supposedly he's a macroeconomist. I had already exchanged with macroeconomist, from Fidelity actually, and he was also very disappointing. Like they didn't understand some basic math, basically. But let's not go in details. I kind of like actually the other guy, but he's presenting me with this equation that applies to stocks, and actually stocks with dividends, and say, well, where applies to Bitcoin. It doesn't, because Bitcoin is a completely different system. It doesn't need to have dividends, and many things that have values don't have dividends, including many stocks. And I then presented to him the evidence in my article. I wrote an entire, very detailed article that I ask people to read. I will link it to the video, where I show point by point how Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme. And there are many different arguments, right? For example, when people say it doesn't contribute anything, it contributes to the economy in an incredible fashion and on many levels, right? And I describe all these things that Bitcoin contributes to the economy, from using wasteful sources of energy to bring in electricity to rural areas. There are many projects that are working like that to create an alternative financial system that people can use to exchange monetary value with a technology that is unbelievably valuable. I wrote in my book, I use this idea of a value triad, and the ledger by itself is super valuable because it's a technology that some people say it's basically the next revolution after the double count, the double entry ledger that was invented in Italy and created a financial revolution. This is a triple entry ledger, and it's an incredible technological innovation that by itself, that component will be invaluable. But there are other three, right? There is a social network, there is all the thermodynamic network, the financial network. So it's a triad, and I describe it in detail in my book, that gives an enormous value to Bitcoin. In fact, it's undervalued. Bitcoin eventually will be valued $10 million each Bitcoin. And when we are reaching there, I don't know if it continues to go up simply because it would be valuable as the entire value of Earth, right? Of the financial value of Earth, because it will be equivalent to all the, if Bitcoin is $10 million, the market cap is equivalent to the entire real estate of the world, right? So at that point, it will not be that Bitcoin cannot grow more because it doesn't have intrinsic value, is because it consumes all the value of the world, unless we continue to add value, maybe through AI revolution, maybe we start to mine asteroids. But there is a point where Bitcoin will be the most valuable network, financial network in the world, and we are going there. We have 2 orders of magnitude. It will take 10 orders of magnitude. We went across 8 orders of magnitudes, and we have only 2. So when people say we are too early, we are not early in a scaling point of view, because we already did 8 orders, and we just need 2. It's nothing, right? For something that went through 8 orders of magnitude, 2 more orders of magnitude is nothing. It's just that with the power law, we slow down. So instead of taking it few years, it's going to take 20 years. But it's going to happen. 20 years is also a relatively short amount of time. It's going to happen. And the traditional financial people don't know how to understand Bitcoin, both because of personal reasons and because they are part of the old system, and also because we don't have the tools. In particular, somebody like this person that doesn't understand why, it's not a stupid person. He has a lot of, actually, some of his responses seemed that he was reading some of what I was saying and at least understood at some level the math behind it. Like, he understands what a power law is, at least heard the term, and is kind of responding in tone, with the right approach. But he's also missing completely the point. He's saying that, for example, power laws are not a valuation framework, but it's not true, because actually I reply to him very quickly, because I'm very familiar with all the literature. It is 12 years that I'm studying these things. I wrote an entire book, so I'm very well prepared. And he immediately responds like that. Well, first of all, there is a law that is called the Metcalfe law, that is kind of has been a theoretical law until now, because there are no many examples where we can apply it up to now, because people, we didn't have many networks in the past, right, when the law was created. But it was a very powerful intuition by Metcalfe saying, if you have a network, look at the number of links, because the connectivity of a network is where the value is, right? And that should be proportional. It's going to be a non-linear relationship between how many people adopt Bitcoin, or whatever the network, or in our case, Bitcoin, and the value of a network, right? You can use price. You can use, for Bitcoin, you can use price. Because price multiplied a fixed supplies is basically the market cap, right? It is why I use price, because it's basically price multiply constant, because the market cap right now is kind of a constant. It's close to a constant. We kind of reach the maximum. So there was already this theoretical idea. So somebody saying, oh, it cannot be used to value something is not true. It's at least there is let's say, an hypothesis. It is a valid hypothesis, but do we have an empirical basis to actually say that real networks in life tend to be, kind of self-valuing through market forces, through network property? Yes, I showed him a Nature article, and he completely ignored it. He didn't respond to that at all. He changed topic. He posted what really upset me, that he posted another post now saying, show me the math. And I did show him the math. He ignored my math, and now he's talking about fixed supply, because he wants to bring the discussion to fixed supply when he knows, and I am the first person that say, no, that scarcity idea of fixed supply is not a good argument at all to give value to Bitcoin. When people say Bitcoin gets its value from the fixed supply, they miss the point. And I wrote many posts and even articles on this, and people attack me because that is what they use as a mental model of where the value of Bitcoin is, and that scarcity thing is not. And this is why one of the reasons is because of people like this that know, I'm sure that he knows how to destroy that argument. But he cannot destroy my argument, because the only thing that he could do is ignore it. So when I brought that Nature article to him, and I will link it, we can maybe tonight we are going to have a physics of Bitcoin show with my colleague Stephen Perrinov, that is another physicist, and we will discuss this in detail, at least my part of the discussion, and I will show you the article then. The article is really cool because what the article does, and it's published in Nature. It is one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world, okay? And what the guys do are the authors, and I think the names are Italian. I didn't look their affiliation. I should, but they have Italian sounding names. They argue, and with data, they look at the data. They first of all, the article has value in the title. Okay, so they say the explosive value of network, and then they show that all different, very important fundamental in fact, is probably the most valuable assets in the world. We are talking about Facebook, Google. Right now, these are among the most valuable things in the modern world, these networks. And they show the value of a network, that you can measure in many different ways, is related to basically Metcalfe law, kind of law. In fact, actually, we found values. They are all power laws. They are power laws. They say there are these power laws between the value of a company and how many people are involved in the network. That is exactly what I'm showing is the case for Bitcoin. They are all power laws. So somebody says, oh, power law is not a valuation framework. Well, here is an article that say for network it is. For the right, as you are trying to apply the wrong math to Bitcoin. That is this silly formula that he came up with, it didn't come up with, but is using a classical formula to measure the value of some kind of company that issues dividends, or maybe whatever, or the other type of assets that are not comparable with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is completely different thing. Okay, and so they cannot do anything, with this math. He's not able to. I invited him to a public debate. He's ignoring that. He didn't even respond. And probably said, I am this big guy. I write for Forbes. A columnist means I can get a column. Anybody can write a column for Forbes. But anyway, so sure, he has he's a professional. Otherwise, I will not even make a video. But it's so indicative of how these traditional finance people think about Bitcoin, because they don't have the right mental model, right? So the moment you show them something surprising, he didn't even debate the validity, the mathematical validity of a power law. I showed him one of the best graphs. It is, if you take the bottom, it's a so clean power law. When you see it, if you have one, a heart, and two, a mind, you say, whoa, there is something here going on. And it's absolutely the type of behavior that you will not expect from a Ponzi scheme, because Ponzi schemes are exponential. They grow very fast and they decay and they die. And he is not able to answer. He is absolutely not able to answer. And now he's asking people to give him the math. but he wants the math that he can debate, right? He wants the math of finite cap or scarcity. That is a very bad argument. I have always said, and this is why, right? He wants to challenge people on that argument because it's an easy argument to destroy. Because just give you an example: diamonds, right? It's an artificial created scarcity that doesn't give really value to diamond, because actually we make artificial diamonds that kind of not destroy the market, but in theory cool. There is no there is no really reason why natural diamonds should be so valuable when we can create them in the lab, something similar. Oh, this is natural. Okay, so what? It's artificial. It's mostly created by social habits. That is, in particular in the US, in Italy, we didn't even have that habit. We didn't. I grew up. Nobody. My dad didn't give a diamond to my mom because nobody did. We didn't have that kind of social habit that Americans have. It was created in America and then kind of spread around the world, and now, unfortunately, even in Italy. A diamond, they are interesting, they are beautiful, in a sense, but they should not be valuable as they are, and they create a fake scarcity that gives supposedly the value to the diamond. And so one can destroy very easily arguments of value based on scarcity. While this idea that Bitcoin is a network is so powerful that cannot be handled. This is why this guy is changing topic. And first, he's moving the goalpost, saying he answer any of the things that I raise in the paper, in the article, like the math is not the same, etc. And then he say, well, but it's not power laws are not valuations tools. And then I show him an entire paper, say, well, actually, assets that are not just assets but also networks can be valued using power laws, and there are all power laws. He avoids the topic. He says, this is not math. No, it's beautiful math, powerful math. It's the math of cities. There is an entire lecture that I told, he's a TED speaker. Well, there was another TED speaker, a physicist, that created an entire lecture showing the relevant math for corporations, that is the math of Ponzi schemes. So in a certain sense, all the corporations, in a way, they are Ponzi schemes because they grow as exponential, they consume all the resources around them, and they collapse. While power laws is the math of cities, and cities are eternal. He has, in the lecture, that is the punchline. He says, corporations die and cities continue to live. You can do anything to cities. You can nuke them, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You can have barbarian invasions, like with Rome, and still survive, because that math, the math of power laws, it's self-reliant, it's anti-fragile. There are a lot, all kind of things that you need to write an entire book. The book Scale, for example, by Jeffrey West, he didn't just do the lecture, but also wrote an entire book, explains the math. And also in my book, because I try to recreate kind of like a Scale type of book, but applied to Bitcoin, explaining why it's relevant to Bitcoin. And I created basically a new way of, it's not completely new, because, for example, this paper says that, we should use this power law dynamics to value networks, right? But it's also Metcalfe law. But I elaborate on that. Let's say I go deeper and say, well, this is maybe the most objective way to value something, because everything else is kind of subjective, and the math doesn't is not a reliable math, while the math of power laws, when you have a network, then is actually probably the most valuable thing that you can buy networks, right? And Bitcoin is the ultimate network because it's completely decentralized, differently from Google, differently from LinkedIn, differently from Facebook. It doesn't have a CEO. Actually, all these things that people say are hallmarks of scams or Ponzi's are actually good things when you put it in a network, because the best network you can have is a decentralized network, and Bitcoin is. So it's kind of crazy that somebody starting, just from an intuitive point of view, something that was few cents 17 years ago, and now it's close to $100,000. Oh, it's a Ponzi. A Ponzi don't last 17 years. They don't go through all kind of different crises, all kind of crazy situation like FTX and China banning and all these things, government trying to attack it, and they survive. There is something else. And this is what makes me crazy, because these people don't have a scientific, logical argument. It's all, well, I belong to the traditional finance. I don't like Bitcoin, maybe because I didn't buy Bitcoin, because if this guy bought Bitcoin or invested in Bitcoin, he will support Bitcoin. He missed the boat. Now, what can he do? He has to attack it, right? And attack it in a childish way that is not really intellectually honest, because when, I show him the math and he says, show me the math, he cannot answer anything beside the math that he learned in economic school, that is not the correct math. And when you show him the physics math, he say, well, that is not what we use. That is a circular argument, but is what other people show. The real data uses, the real market, so nature and reality uses to value networks. There is an entire, at the end, write the article, somebody else wrote it, and he has real data to show that is true. So if he wants to reply in an honest way, you should read the article and then say, well, this doesn't apply to Bitcoin. It does perfectly, because you can show there is a power law between price and adoption that is very close to Metcalfe. Now, the only thing one can say, well, why for the other networks is the power of 3, or this other power for Bitcoin is 2? It doesn't matter, Bitcoin is probably maybe slower, growing slower than this other network, but it doesn't matter. There is also the other component, right? How fast the adoption grows. The adoption grows also as a network property that is exactly the same growth of the internet. So Bitcoin is growing as fast as the internet. The internet grew with a power law with the cube, and Bitcoin is growing with the power law of a cube. Okay, and there are many other networks. For example, everybody's familiar with that review system, the review network of movies called IMDb. That one also grew with the power law of cube. And the viruses spread, certain viruses under certain condition spread with the power of cube. And even if it is, seems initially a bad thing, like Bitcoin is like a virus, it is like a virus, because there is a spread, and this, where one could say, right, if it was a lazy person, will say, oh, okay, then you're saying that Bitcoin is like a Ponzi, because it relies on other people spreading the idea, right, via contact. First of all, it's not just the only way, because people learn not directly from other people, but through the internet, through videos, etc. But no, it's not, because also how people join a city or join the internet is similar. They see value because other people join. Exactly how it happens in a city. What makes the city valuable is people joining the city. Okay, the fact that there is this similarity between a Ponzi scheme, or I'm joining the Ponzi scheme, and this is what gives you value, it doesn't make Bitcoin or a city a Ponzi scheme, because everything else is different. That is the only thing that we have in common. Joining something doesn't mean, you join a nation, you join a city, right? People being born join naturally the economy of a nation, right? They are enrolled in the city, or not necessarily the city. If they are born in that city, but they can move, right? In a nation, you become a citizen of that nation by birth, right? So you're joining something, and your presence eventually creates value to the nation, because GDP of nations are also proportional to the population. So, again, if you listen this video, participate in the debate, maybe commenting, etc. It's interesting because it's the first time I see some real traditional that is not Peter Schiff, right? Because Peter Schiff is a meme. This guy is more serious, right? He's supposed to be an analyst, and it has um, some relevance in the traditional financial world. And he's asking for the math. I'm showing the math, and he's running away. He's just running away because he cannot answer. He kind of dismiss it, and he thought that he got me because Bitcoin doesn't follow his little equation. It is not the right equation to apply. When I showed him the real equation, the references, etc., he just concluded the debate by saying, "Oh, there is no math, right?" Well, if there was no math, people will not have been able to publish Nature journal article, right, with data. So basically it's a way of saying you won by without saying it directly, right? Is capitulating. And now I saw him making this other post saying, "Well, debate me on fixed supply or limited supply. Debate me on that, right? So I can say something intelligent." And he's completely avoiding debating me on the power law thing because he cannot. So yeah, if you see this video, and if you go on my X, look at this post and comment. If you are, you don't have to be a Bitcoin supporter. If you have something against Bitcoin, make a serious argument and let's have a serious debate. And by the way, I challenged, and I not challenged, it's nice if we could have a serious discussion, respectful discussion. This is different than a debate with British Odo, right? It's meme-like. I'm sure this guy will not break spaghetti while we are debating serious topic. But if he's interested, I will discuss with him, right? Maybe let's have a video. Let's have maybe even moderated by somebody. It will be interesting, right? There is a Bitcoiner that he wrote an entire book on the math and physics of Bitcoin, and it's a scholar. I'm trying to publish. I'm the director of Scientific Institute. That is a real thing. It's not something that we are doing in a garage. We have several scholars joining us, even from institutions like the Polytechnic of Torino and so on. There are, by the way, recently other papers that scholars are writing. Another paper was submitted that basically shows that if you want to make long-term prediction of Bitcoin, short-term autocorrelation works. That is what works for many assets, because kind of a price today is similar to the price yesterday, but within a certain amount of time. That is, I think, if I remember well, in the paper. I will post this link to in the video description on YouTube. They say if you go beyond 6 months, the power law becomes dominant, and is real clear that the power law tells you the long-term trend of Bitcoin. So scholars are noticing, they are joining this research group. It's not just me, right? There is Stephen Perrineau, Harvard PhD astrophysicist. There is Pius Springer, that he has both a math PhD and he worked for traditional finance in banks in Germany, and for Wall Street too. So there are many more scientists and scholars and people that have the right background that are studying these things. So it's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of real math. But you have to engage with the real math and understand it, and not just wave it away like this guy's doing. So it would be cool if Henrik could accept my debate proposal, and we could lay down, he can lay down his argument, I can lay down my argument, then the public can decide. This is not how you do science, but given there is a lot of public interest, it will be interesting to let people know that there are arguments in favor. I say the arguments in favor of Bitcoin destroy completely the arguments against Bitcoin. But if he thinks his point of view is valid, then he can try to defend it while we have this debate, right? And we can follow rules or whatever. So let's see if he accepts. I think he will not. But in the meanwhile, get involved, write a comment, like the discussion, so more people maybe see it, because I think it's a very valuable discussion to have. Okay, and tune in about a couple of hours, because we will have a physics of Bitcoin show, and I will bring up this topic. I will have you can hear what Steven thinks about this, because I will bring this topic to his attention, and and we'll cover it. All right. I want to double check if there is any question or comment. No, there is no comment. Maybe people will have comment later when we have a physics of Bitcoin show. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Let me know what you think. By joining the discussion. Thank you.